Hey everyone, here we are again. We're going to talk about and kind of summarize and put together this idea of our multiplication of fractions, the work that we've been doing over these past couple of videos. We have been thinking a lot about like, oh, what happens, right, if I have 2/3 of 5? Or what's going to happen if I have 4/6 times 1/3? And we've done a lot of work around the concept of like, oh, well, how do we model that, right? How does that make sense? And how do we make uh, sense of how we get our answers out of there? But today, what we're going to do is we're really going to focus on like what we have learned and really what is the algorithm, right? This is a lot of the why, but today we're really going to focus on the how. How do we just do this? So when I see these problems, like how do I make sense of that? So let's kind of dive in. So one thing we know here is we have our model of a whole number times a fraction. So if we have 5 wholes times 2/3, one of the things we've been talking about is, oh, cool. Well, that just gives me this idea that I have 2/3 5 times. And if I put those together, right, I end up with 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 out of 3, which is top heavy. And then I go into my division and I get my product that way, right? And we've noticed from that really comes about it is that when we multiply really these top numbers here, we get that same thing. And that's really the how, right? This is the how. This is the how we do it, multiply across the top. So today we're going to put all that together and think about, well, what do we notice? Well, one thing we notice with all of these problems, 3/4 times 1/3 or 5 times 2/3, that we are just focusing on this idea that a simple rule of multiplication of fractions. We just do this. We first make sure they are both fractions. Once we know they are both fractions, we're going to multiply our numerator. And then we are going to multiply our denominator. And then we will reduce if needed. So we're going to put that to practice today and think about what we're doing. So let's look at this first one over here. Well, they're both fractions, 3/4 and 1/3. Check. So I'm going to multiply my numerators. 3 times 1 is 3. Multiply my denominators. 4 times 3 is 12. Reduce if I need to. And actually, in this case, I can divide both of these by 3 and I get 1/4. Over here, make sure both are fractions. Well, actually, we see here that this is not a fraction. It is a whole number, but we can always make a whole number as an equivalent fraction by putting it over 1. So if we do that, now we can just follow our steps. Well, 5 times 2 is 10. 1 times 3 is 3. And again, to reduce this, it's top heavy. So I, again, will divide and get my mixed number, which, as we showed before, is 3 1/3. So as we practice a couple more times, let's just look at this. Let's take 2 more fractions. 6/4 times, I don't know, 5/10. And let's do another one with a whole number. So maybe we're doing 6 times 4, 6. Okay, so again, think of our steps here. Step 1, make sure they're both fractions. Number 2, multiply the numerator and then the denominator. So multiply numerator and denominator, and then reduce. So if we follow these steps again, let's look at our first problem here. They are both fractions. So I am going to go ahead and multiply, even though this is top heavy, I just realized, but it doesn't matter, it's still a fraction. So let's multiply across the top. That gets me 30. And let's multiply across the bottom. That gets me 40. And I have 30/40, which actually I can reduce here. I can divide both these by 10, leaving me with 3/4. Over here, for our second question, again, I have a whole number. So how do I make a whole number an equivalent fraction? I just put it over 1 because 6 divided by 1 is still 6. Now I multiply my numerators. 6 times 4 is 24. 1 times 6 is 6. 24 divided by 6 actually gives me 4. So there's my answer to that. And that's really all we're doing. So again, this is just putting together everything we've talked about in the past week in class about multiplying fractions. we have done all these amazing models from before. And a lot of us have even noticed, hey, wait a minute, I can just be multiplying across the top and the bottom, which is absolutely true. So as we get into this next stage of multiplying fractions, keep in mind these final 3 steps. 1, always make sure that both of the numbers you're multiplying are fractions. And if you need to, make an equivalent to help you. Then you are going to multiply the numerator. And then you will multiply the denominator. And finally, to wrap it all up, you will reduce so you have a simplified answer, meaning if it's top heavy, convert it to a mixed number. And if it is just needs to be reduced by division, something like 10/12, well, then again, remember your rules of divisibility. So with that being said, we're going to leave you to that. And as always, we appreciate your time and we'll see you next time.